Thank you, fellow patriots, for coming out and shivering all together today. I appreciate you giving up your time and your energy to stand together and testify once again that the United States is different. It is special. It is exceptional. And we have zero intention of melting into a global pot of gray, tasteless porridge.
Yeah!
Before I ran for state representative last year, up in the 21st District, which is Edmonds, Linwood, Mukilteo, I taught the English language to international college students for 10 years. 2 of those years were in Red Communist China right after the Tiananmen Massacre. And 3 of those years were in the Persian Gulf after the First Gulf War. Those 5 years living under 2 forms of totalitarianism were a crash course in liberty versus tyranny, and I've thought often about what makes America exceptional. How many of you have been inside the Capitol building in Washington, D.C.? Raise your hands. Oh, good. Great number of you. You might have been in the Rotunda, the big round room under the Capitol dome, where there are 8 huge taxpayer-funded paintings all around the sides, depicting important moments in our history. I'd like to remind you about 3 of those 8 paintings. One of them is of Christopher Columbus landing in 1492. His men are shown holding a very tall cross as they walk onto the island that they named San Salvador, or Holy Savior. What do you think was on their minds at that moment? Another huge painting in the Rotunda is of Pocahontas, kneeling in a white dress as a pastor prays for her at her Christian baptism in Jamestown in 1613. A third painting at the Capitol is of the Pilgrims, kneeling in prayer with a huge open Bible before leaving England in 1620. Now that these paintings were paid for with taxes should not surprise us, because that Capitol Rotunda room was used by up to 5 churches each week, with congregations of up to 2,000 people meeting there. In fact, Thomas Jefferson himself went to church there for his 8 years as president, and he ordered the Marine Corps band to play for worship. Yes, on tax dollars. But let's bring that theme closer to home. Each state was invited to send 2 large statues to display at the U.S. Capitol building. One of the statues that Washington State sent was of Marcus Whitman, who, as you know, was a pioneer and missionary doctor, and his wife Narcissa opened a school. The Whitmans and 2 of their adopted children were massacred. Our other statue that Washington State sent to represent us at the U.S. Capitol is of Mother Joseph. Mother Joseph led the construction of more than 30 hospitals, schools, and orphanages that served the native peoples of the Pacific Northwest. You can see replicas of both of those huge statues right here in this building, one to the left and one to the right, where you might notice Marcus Whitman is holding a large Bible and Mother Joseph is kneeling in prayer. The United States of America is exceptional because, as Abraham Lincoln said, and I quote, "It is the duty of all nations as well as of men to own their dependence upon the overruling power of God, and to recognize the sublime truth announced in the Holy Scriptures and proven by all history, that those nations only are blessed whose God is the Lord." End quote. Further back, when Benjamin Franklin urged the Continental Congress to pray and ask God for help, a miracle happened. The bickering stopped and our Constitution was born. Our nation is remarkable because we stated in the Declaration of Independence that our rights come not from government, but from God. Having our inalienable rights to life, liberty, and property protected by a Constitution that severely restricted government's role allowed our values to soar. Faith, self-reliance, creativity, generosity, and hard work brought unprecedented success. Ladies and gentlemen, we must teach our children and our neighbors that the reason our country became so quickly rich and powerful is because we used to recognize what George Washington said in his first inaugural speech. There are, quote, "eternal rules of order and right which heaven itself has ordained." President Washington warned us that we could no longer expect the smiles of heaven upon us as a country if we ever forgot that. Our school children used to be required to memorize that speech. Oh, fellow Americans, we are human and far from perfect, but if we apologize and ask the help of God and strive to follow those eternal rules of order and right, the blessings will follow. The United Nations, on the other hand, is the antithesis of these ideas. Nowhere on its website do we find recognition of providence or our dependence upon it. Most Americans believe that the family is the basic building block of society, but the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child gives the child the right to tell his parents where he will go to school, what religion he will learn, what friends he will hang out with, and what his curfew will be. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and Senator Barbara Boxer have promised that Congress will one day ratify this treaty.
Not my life.
Our Constitution protects our right to protect our own lives, the right to bear arms. But the UN says, trust your government and the UN's Arms Trade Treaty to protect you. Our Constitution protects our right to keep the fruits of our labors, our property. But the UN lists environmental sustainability as one of its 8 Millennium Development Goals. That's right, and we are seeing the impacts to our property and taxes already. You've heard a lot about that today. If you remember only one thing from my talk today, remember this. The religious beliefs of our founders and modern leaders have made this country not a theocracy, but the safest place in the world for people to practice any faith or no faith. These core beliefs have given us a generous spirit, seen even in little things, like the way we say please, thank you, and have a nice day. Even though we are more individualistic than any other nationality, we are kinder to strangers than any of the 21 countries and territories that I've visited so far, because we recognize that individuals have value whether they are in our group or not. Alexis de Tocqueville first wrote about America's exceptional characteristics in 1831, mentioning our high literacy rate, our fierce work ethic, our religious roots and active churches, our practicality. But the first person to use the phrase American Exceptionalism was, believe it or not, Soviet leader Joseph Stalin in 1929. He used it when he was criticizing the American Communist Party for believing that we were so special that Marxism wasn't necessary here. Look, this battle of ideas is far from over, but we are in it for the long haul, and we will prevail. We will be informed voters, write letters, hold book clubs, call into the talk shows, run for office, do whatever it takes to teach our neighbors and our families that America is the world's last best hope. We will stand firm with millions of our fellow Americans battling to preserve America as a city on a hill, a beacon of freedom to the entire world. Thank you, and God bless America.